1.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Melanin Margin. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams.
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
And this is the talk show dedicated to bringing the marginalized to the spotlight and uplift the Black voices that will no longer stay silent. So, Daquon, let's get into this week's race conversation. Now, should movements, Black or otherwise, be peaceful?
I think that when it comes to social movements, there's no way to police a movement. I think policing a movement to be peaceful or whatever is the antithesis of the movement. Because at the end of the day, during a movement, it's something unjust that happens and people are outraged, rightfully so. And so by trying to police somebody's anger to be like, oh, you can only be peaceful, that's the only way you can bring about change, you're honestly creating a system where you're just promoting conformity and you're promoting being too passive. That's not to say that peaceful protests can't be direct action, because we've seen, especially during the civil rights movement, their peaceful protests were focused on peaceful, direct action. But I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, honestly, I think that when it comes to peaceful protest, I've been on the fence on that one for when I was a couple years ago. I was just thinking that when I would hear stuff about it, I'm like, well, why are they breaking things and why are they this and the fourth? And it was actually Kimberly Ann Foster for Harriet's page. I don't know if you know about her, but she's a YouTuber and she was kind of breaking it down. And it really kind of educated me because I was like, I was like, why do we have to be fighting stuff? And why do we have to be breaking stuff? Why do we have to be causing these riots and blah, blah, blah? And it's kind of like, honestly, when she said, she was like, this is an unjust thing that happened. And unfortunately, as much as we would like to be peaceful and PC and trying to be, whatever, obviously they don't give a fuck. Like they don't care when we do stuff like that. So when you start fucking with white people's money, that's when they start caring. That's when they start taking the time to be like, oh, wait a minute, why the fuck are y'all doing all of this? And it was really one of those moments when I heard her say that. She was like, yes, keep fucking it up. Like keep doing that because this is keep going. This is a problem that's consistently happening. And so many times with these movements, a lot of movements, were cornerstoned a lot by revolutions. And even though in some ways it can seem, like you said, it can seem counterproductive because you're like meeting violence with violence, but it's like sometimes it's the only way to get people to see just how much we're not going to take it anymore. Like the Stonewall riots or or like you said, the civil rights movement. And there were plenty of slave revolts back in the day to show just how we're not going to just, I'm pretty sure them slave masters wouldn't have cared. They was like, we shall, like, I don't think they would have really cared too much about that. You know what I'm saying? I don't think seeing these movements and seeing how we have to fight back, it's unfortunate that it has to be that way. And there's so many people that say and argue, well, you can say what you got to say without being violent. You can say what you say without being whatever. But it's like, but when we tried that, nothing's changed. Like Martin Luther King, there always be there's always an argument. Martin Luther King did a piece and Martin Luther King did a piece. I'm like, baby, you ain't watching the same pictures I am. Maybe you're not seeing the same water and the same dogs and the same batons and the same stuff of the assassination. I guess we don't see that part. We don't see that part. We don't see the behind the scenes of the stress and the pain and the fights that they had to go through to be quote unquote peaceful, because all they were met with was violence. Even when we peacefully protested in the Black Lives Matter march, met with tear gas, rubber bullets, because we were saying we did not feel that this we will not continue to be harassed and killed, and we are making a stand. And just by making a stand, we were met with violence. Even in this peaceful march, it was still met with violence. So honestly and truly, Daquon, I don't really think there's sometimes any other way.
Yeah, and I also wanted to piggyback on you talking about Martin Luther King, because I think that there's this grave misrepresentation, whitewashing of King and his movements. Because let's be real, Martin Luther King had a security guard with a gun on him at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is, he knew that what he was saying is going to make people mad. And when people
Mm-hmm.
feel upset, when people are angry, especially at a Black person,
Mm.
violence can break out. And he needs his safety. He needed his safety to, keep this movement going. And so, like, yes, the action of Martin Luther King and the protests and stuff like that were kind of peaceful from the Black person's perspective of just like, we're just going to do a march, we're going to do sit-ins, we're not going to be violent towards them. But at the same time, that was a direct kind of marketing ploy. That was a strategy for them because during that time, media was becoming a bigger thing, and like these protests were being televised. And this was the first time for so many people across this country really seeing what happens to Black people and seeing it on the big screen. So they saw people marching, protesting, doing these little chants, having sit-ins, and they saw the state sanctioned violence against them, getting
Mm.
hosed down, getting dogs sicked on them. And so they saw how Black people just being peaceful was met with violence, and that was a strategy to see the kind of injustice in our country because it was like this moral appeal. But I think nowadays when it comes to like racist and dealing with all these different types of bigots, it's like, how do you do a moral appeal to somebody without morals?
Mm. And that is so true. It's the reality is like, I think honestly, I mean, Daquon, do you think that radicalism is necessary for systemic change?
I think so. I think that if you aren't pushing the envelope, you're just kind of holding yourself back. You're just holding the status quo for longer. Like, I think that when we talk about change, it's going to be radical because there was a time when saying that a Black person was a human was radicalism. There was
Yes.
a time when saying that Black people should have rights was radical.
You better
There was
say
a
that.
time when saying gay people should be able to get married, that was radical. So I think that at the end of the day, if human rights are seen as radical ideas, then we should make sure that we are doing whatever we can to push the envelope and make sure that people are seen as people and have the rights that they deserve as human beings.
Period. It's it's so difficult thinking about this in this way because there's so much in white society that has made any movement that does not benefit white men seen as riotous, dangerous, violent, whatever. And it's crazy how those same white people, because I mean, there was this TikTok, I don't know what her name was, not that I care, but she said that where do you see white people weren't rioting, white people weren't doing this, and white people weren't doing that. It's kind of like, it's mighty funny how they don't see their own problems. They don't see how they're rioting against stuff that is not unjust. But when they do it, it's seen as a protest. Even when they are burning things down, blowing up buildings. I mean, the Tulsa, Oklahoma situation that happened, it's still seen as a race war. And then a race war implies that both races were fighting against each other.
Right.
When the truth was, it was white rage and white violence and a white riot against them feeling like Black people were getting too uppity.
Mm.
That's what it was. But every description of it that we hear is race war. Every time we see white people, it's revolution. It's a revolution. Every time we see white people get upset or white people doing stuff that they feel, or white people fighting back or pushing back on things that are quote unquote unjust to them sometimes, not really. But when they push back on things that they don't like and that they don't feel is fair, it's seen as a protest. But when Black people use that same knowledge and that same attitude, it's seen as a riot. If people of color say it, if trans gay people say it, it's seen as riotous or dangerous. And I just want to say something here. In the article, Why the Ashes of People with AIDS on the White House Lawn Matter, Jason Silverton states that 25 years ago, in response to the government officials' failure to adequately respond to AIDS, ACT UP brought the bodies there in action, murdered, to a place they couldn't be ignored, their front lawn. Many other activists had been inspired by David Wojciech in 1991's memoir Close to the Knives, which imagined what if, or what would it be like if each time a lover or friend or stranger died of this disease, their friends, lovers, and neighbors would take the dead body and drive it with it in a car, hundreds of miles an hour to Washington, D.C., and blast it through the gates of the White House and come to a screeching halt before the entrance and dump their lifeless bodies on the steps. Now, of course, they didn't do that, but they did dump the ashes of that on the lawn. Now, some people would say that is radical and over the top and whatever. But those actions that were taken helped make the government realize this was an issue that affects everyone, not just gay people. But it's just showing, once again, how being or a radical idea or something that is just seen as just too much or too far actually made the government start to say, oh, hold up, let me actually pay attention. And that is consistent throughout the years. That is, until we fuck shit up or until something's fucked up, nobody really cares about it. We can't just say we stand in solidarity. No, bitch, we got to get the fuck up and say, no, bitch, let me fuck up your shit a little bit and see how you feel about that. Let me fuck up your grass or let me fuck up your thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy that it takes, and that's honestly even a bigger discussion right there. Why do you think, Daquon, it takes this much of a upheaval or an uproar for the government to take things seriously, or for white society to take things seriously when it comes to from people of color?
I think it's one of those things where they finally realize that they can't ignore us anymore. That it gets to the point to where if you are, you know, with that example of like the ashes on the White House, like, you cannot leave the White House without seeing us. You can't exist in your day-to-day life without seeing us. So I think that when we have these times of unrest, social unrest, we get to the point to where we have to make that claim of like, this is not just going to be something that you can ignore. This is not just going to be us sanctioned off into one section of a park where you can just like move on about your day. Like, we are going to be outside of your workplace. We are going to be blocking roads and doing all of these things so that you cannot move past us. You cannot consider us just like a mild inconvenience. Like, it's stopping what is happening for you to take that time to realize that, like, hey, we need justice. We have been saying this for so long, and we have been met to unhearing ears. So we're going to do something to make sure that you hear us, that you see us, that you physically cannot just ignore us.
Absolutely. I fully agree. I think well said. I fully agree. I think that so many times there have been peaceful marches. There have been peaceful trials to try to get people to do the right thing. There have been times over and over and over and over again where people have tried to get people to understand that gay rights matter, that trans lives matter, that Black trans lives matter, that Black lives matter, Asian lives matter, Hispanic lives, like the list goes on. And it's crazy how, once again, it's all, and then what I really want to say, Daquon, do you remember when Joaquin Phoenix won the Oscar for Joker? And he talked on the stage about Black Lives Matter and about the fact that the Oscars are racist and stuff like that. He did the whole thing, right? And you know what they did as a response, Daquon? Do you know that a lot of people in the audience, or some people in the audience, are like, this isn't the place for this. Why would he do that? This was not the blah, 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 and whatever. And it was so much of a anger from even some of the celebrities. And the craziest part to me was like, yet again, even when it is quote unquote peaceful, look at the reaction. All he did was say it. All he did was talk about it. And look at how just, apathy is worse than hate. And so people just like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about it. Bitch, just because you don't talk about it doesn't mean it erases. It doesn't go away.
Right. The problem colorblind is not real.
Huh?
Colorblind is not real.
It's not. And it's crazy because, and it just baffled me that even a white person in a position of power, a white man, not able to rein in his other white friends, even hearing it from a white man, the highest position of power you can be in America, a successful white man, even him bringing it up is just still like, oh no, baby, keep it close, keep it quiet. But it can't even imagine if a black man would have said that. You see what I'm saying? If a black man would have said the exact same thing in the exact same situation, it'd have been a whole, here they go again.
Right.
Here they go again. But even a white person doing it, saying it, here we go again. This like, even when we are peaceful, y'all still critique us. Even when we are peaceful, y'all still don't make change. Even when we are peaceful, y'all ignore us. So like you said, yeah, we're going to have to fuck some shit up to get you to realize, oh, wait, y'all serious? Oh, y'all big mad. Yes.
Right. Yes. Because they have been telling us time and time and again that, oh, this is not the place. This is not the time. And the question is, when is the time? Like, when is the place? Like, all these times, you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, just like, hold on. Like, people are changing. Like, things are happening. And it's like, we've been waiting for hundreds of years to like be seen as equals. And there are still people that think Black people are inferior. Like, when is the time? Like, there is no perfect time. So when it comes to just like all of these different critiques of social movements, it's like, you cannot critique, oh, this isn't the right place or the right time because you feel inconvenienced. That's not how it works. Because at the end of the day, like, it's not how any of it works, because we're inconvenienced every single day.
And that's what I say. And it's specifically with the Derek Chauvin verdict and the sentencing. I wanted to ask you, Daquon, like, do you believe that had we not fucked shit up about George Floyd and had we not done those protests around the world, do you think this cop would have got away with it?
I think so. I think that we've seen it so many times before that, like, I would not be surprised that it just would have gotten swept under the rug like the hundreds to thousands of other cases.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like it took a worldwide standing, a worldwide march all across before the people were like, ooh, oh, these Black people ain't having it no more. Oh no, this probably ain't a good thing no more. And it took all of that. It took all of that for them to convict this man. And the reality is there are still hundreds, thousands of others who remain unconvicted. This is a small pebble in the ocean of racism. Mm-hmm. The ocean of white men getting away with taking Black lives. The ocean. And it's just baffling to me that there's this argument that, well, and like I said before, and as happy as I am that Derek Chauvin did get sentenced and didn't just get a slap on the wrist, my whole thing is, and I know this sounds so crazy, Daquon, and I want to say this and I want you to give me the real tea, okay? But like, honestly, Daquon, the first thing I thought in my head after I heard, I was like, I had that moment of like, yes, but then I was like, now look at the fodder the white people are gonna have. Look at the new argument points they're gonna have now. All the racists who want to keeping their policies in place that keep fucking up marginalized people and keep the Emmett Till bill on the Senate floor not being passed in a law. They're gonna say, well, Derek Chauvin's in jail. Well, we don't let all of them get away with it. Is it pessimistic of me to think that at the end of the day, as much as I'm grateful for this verdict and as much as I'm grateful for the sentencing and the somewhat justice that we're seeing, it's like, are they going to use that as another way to say, oops, y'all done fucked up, right? You know you done fucked up, right? You know done fucked up, right? You know what right. Am I making sense, Daquon?
Yeah, and I think that your pessimism is completely valid. Like, we've seen it so many times before where we get an inch and they're like, all right, y'all done. Like, y'all have enough. And the reality is, you know, just because he has a sentence, you know, I think like the sentencing was I don't remember exactly. I think it was like 20 something
Yeah,
years.
22, I think, to something like that. It's something like that.
Right. And I think a part of the sentencing was, after 2/3 of the sentence, they can do like a reevaluation, which means that he can get out early. So he
Mhm.
may only serve like 15 or so years before getting out early. And the real question is this justice? Like,
Mm.
does the family of George Floyd have justice based on this?
Yeah, but it was, just to clarify, it was 22 and a half years.
Yeah.
And I just, and like you said, it to me, it's partial justice. I'll say that. Because yes, a murderer was convicted, but the reality is we still have not made an upheaval of the police system. We still have not seen policies in place like the Emmett Till bill that is federally mandating certain things that protect or stop the chokeholds and stop certain things. And it's just like, it's frustrating because it's like, yes, it's a win, but it's still like a small battle.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of like, I liken it sort of towards the anti-segregation stuff and the whatever. It's like, it's a small step. Like, yes, this one thing is recognized and we see it now, we see the bad, but it's like the bigger issues that allowed all these things to occur in the first place is still only being it's a band-aid.
Right.
And I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I am grateful that we're seeing this. I'm grateful that we're starting to hold people responsible, but it's like, are we just going to hold this one white person responsible and then just let all the other hundreds of thousands get away with all the stuff that they're doing? You know what I mean?
Exactly, because at the end of the day, like, this one sentencing doesn't stop other people from committing these atrocities. It's not like, okay, now we can't do this, because it's still a corrupt system. And, if you're a police officer and you're being taken into prison by police officers, let's be real, there's a brotherhood there.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk a little bit more about how Black people or people of color or any marginalized community that brings up an issue. I just want to know, why is it that the party on the other side, and we're going to use Black people for this situation, but why is it the party on the other side, white people, seem to feel that they have a place to tell us how we should or shouldn't feel?
They shouldn't. That
Like,
that
why? Like, why do they, like, my question, I guess I'm asking, is like, why is it that white people feel the need to police Black people's anger? Like,
racism. Because let's be honest, a lot of this comes out of them wanting their comfortability. They have privileges, whether they acknowledge them or not. They have those privileges, and they don't want to give those up. And part of having radical change and equity and equality for everyone is making sure that some people's privilege doesn't prevent others from having a successful life or having a chance to have a successful life. And I think that's where we get this kind of policing of Black people's anger through racism, because and it even comes from like the people you would trust the most. Like, I think like a lot of times people are like, conservatives are bad, they're the worst, and they they do bad things, let's be honest. But at the end of the day, like, if I see a Trump supporter, I can stay away from them. But if I know a white person who is liberal and thinks that they have these liberal ideas, but they're not like fully all the way with, revolution and, giving up their privilege, that's a danger. And I think, Martin Luther King kind of said it best in his letter to Birmingham jail. So I'll read it just because I don't want to mix up his words. I want you to hear them from his mouth. But he said, "First, I must confess that over the last few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride towards freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is a presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically feels he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season.
Let's pause on that right there.
Right. Let that marinate.
Let them let that marinate, because the reality is, and you know what's so scary about this, Daquon, that what you just read was that we're still doing the same conversations. Like, we're still saying the same shit. And they wonder why we're so upset. They wonder why we're fucking shit up, because we've been saying this shit over and over and over and over again. And I'm sorry, baby, Black people is tired. And I said it once and I'll say it again, just as much as you tired of hearing Black Lives Matter, we're tired of saying that shit. We're tired of having to say that shit. We wish that we could just be, we wish that society could magically get rid of all of its racism, magically start valuing people of color's lives, and gay persons of color's lives, and gay people, and trans people, and non-binary, gender non-conforming, the whole umbrella. We wish that we could wake up one day and it magically goes away and we don't have to have all this other stuff going on. But no, baby, it is. This is the reality we live in, and we're still fighting the same fucking fight. And it gets tiresome hearing this over and over and over again, like, especially when the whole revolution, the riots, the white riot at the Capitol happened, and people kept saying, "This isn't America." Bitch, what America are you living in? And you notice it was only white people saying that shit,
right?
And it was so annoying, because like, this isn't America, this isn't America, this isn't America. It's like, bitch, I don't know what America you've been living in as a white person, baby, but Black America, gay America, LGBTQI America, baby, this is America.
Period.
This is our society. You got to make a point, though. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing, like, that, like, it is the foundation of America. We have to realize that racism was in the foundation of our core. Like, people talk about, like, the Civil War. The Civil War was fought for slavery. We talk about the American Revolution, and let's be honest, the British ended slavery a lot earlier than America did. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, like, especially with July 4th coming up and, like, Independence Day, it's like, independence for who? For white men, old white men, to have the ability to do whatever they want without somebody telling them what to do.
You better say that, Daquon. Independence for who? You better say that shit, Daquon. You better say that shit right there. And that's the facts. That's the facts. It's like, we're celebrating an America that still does not recognize its faults. Everyone loves to say America is the greatest country in the world. And my thing is, I'm not saying that America is not a little bit better than some other countries, but I will say, baby, don't act like your shit don't stink. You know what I mean? Like, like, to be a little crass, like, don't act like that, baby. Don't act like you ain't got a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of. Like, calm down, baby. Take that 3 notches down, baby, because you just, what they call you just being bougie right now. America's bougie. America's the bougie aunt who only pop off a little when she get a little tax return, and she suddenly got new cars and new whatever, but she still ain't got nothing. She still ain't got her rent paid, her license off, and the gas ain't paid and stuff like that. That's what America is like. America's that one aunt who got a little bit of money, but not enough and try to show off a little bit, but don't really got nothing for real.
Right.
And it's crazy. Like, and I want to ask you too, Daquon, like, do you think, or what do you consider to be radical? Like, what, like, we often allow and call people like Malcolm X and, Martin Luther King, or whatever the case, all these other people in, like, Rosa Parks' statement, we often call that radical. And that's like, at the time, that was so just, no, you know what I'm saying? What do you consider to be radical? Or do you have a system to gauge that?
I think that, like, radicalism is, like, not, how do I put this? It's not really a thing. I think that in our day and age and in our society, the term radical has just been kind of like this dog whistle to be like extremists. Like,
Yeah.
we need to get rid of them because we're so quick to label certain people as radicals when in reality, they are asking for basic human rights. And it's like, how are basic human rights radical? Like, that does not make sense to me. It should be something that we all have. So I think that radicalism has been kind of this term that's been used to like denote extremism. But I think that in kind of reclaiming radicalism, it's turned into something, at least for a lot of Black people, where it's like, we need to be able to see a world that has never been seen before, see a world that does not fit in the confines of our system, but we know it to be better. And we know that the systems that are different from our current systems would be better in the fight for equity and equality.
That's what I think that really the conversation should happen about understanding the difference between radicalism and extremism. And I want to ask you that there's a denotation there. And that what do you consider extremism?
I think that even extremism is kind of like like it's one of those terms that's like, you can be extremist on either side. Like, it's based off of your vantage point. So saying, there should be universal healthcare for everyone, that's extremist to some people. And it's like, for others, that's just basic norms. And so I think that when we get into these terms of like radicalism and extremism, personally for me, I use the term extremism for something that I see as like unnecessarily like far off. Like, it's something that does not have a mode of logic or anything between it. It's just
Chaos.
extreme to be extreme. But like, radicalism to me has a purpose. It's meant to kind of turn systems on its head, to think beyond what we have right now and think about what we can have and what we can create.
I fully agree. I think that honestly and truly, like, not too long ago, gay marriage was an extremist idea or a radical idea, and like you said, not too far longer than that, gay people, interracial marriages was seen as extremism or radicalism and setting forth, and it was just so just can't possibly imagine. And it's honestly, truly, like you said, it's all about your vantage point. And I think that the real truth is, I think that, like you said before, the difference between, in my opinion, I think the difference between radicalism and like overt extremism or whatever, I think that the difference is that radicalism is, like you said, something that has a purpose. There's a reason why we're fucking this shit up, because of this, that, and the fourth. The reason why we're being so quote unquote chaotic is because this chaos has a purpose. It's to make people pay attention because they can't hear us when we talk. So we need to yell, break shit, break into stuff for people to be like, oh. So it's like the Black Lives Matter movement, when there were some riots happening, which it wasn't often, but when it did happen, it got more media coverage. It got out there. When Rosa Parks when they staged that whole sit-in on the bus, that got media attention. If she just said, I would like to sit here, and then when the guy said get up and she just got up, that shit wouldn't have got nowhere. There wouldn't have been no coverage of that. Right. But because she held her ground and went to jail for it, that's when people started to see. If it wasn't for people doing that ACT UP movement and doing that in the ashes or whatever, that's extreme. That's extremism. It's too far. But it's like, the radicalism in that sense is, it has a purpose for it. We're not just throwing ashes because, we just trying to be funny or trying to be cute. No, it has a purpose. Whereas extremism is violence just for violence sake. It's chaos for chaos sake. And I think that to me is where I feel that there's a separation. It's like there is a purpose for riots when the Black Lives Matter, and the purpose was for the Stonewall riot. It was because it got media attention. Gay people were not gonna take this shit no more. Gay people were not going to be treated this way anymore and be rated and be put in jail for just loving who they love. So they were like, you know what, motherfucker, I'm tired of this shit. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened. And that was a very important reenactment. But like, you know, that's how, and I started making light of it, but it just the reality is like, that's how we have to, that has a purpose, that has a direction. And getting that media coverage helped Black Lives Matter reach across the world. If there wasn't that many riots, we probably wouldn't have got coverage in that way. We probably wouldn't have had people in Europe and people in whatever seeing like, oh shit, this shit is real. Like, why they fucking shit up? Oh, George Floyd died. Oh, that's why they fucking shit up. Because a white cop is just killing a Black man for no reason. Oh, we need to let them know we stand with them. That shit, it brought up the conversation. That's radicalism. Making the conversation heard when nobody else wants to hear it. Forcing them to hear it. Like you said, if we bring like the ACT UP movement, if you bring that shit to their doorstep, they can't ignore it. If you throw those ashes right on the White House lawn, what the fuck they gonna do except clean that shit up? And no, I'm cleaning up somebody's body.
They can't do anything. They really can't, because we're forcing them. And I think that in this conversation, like, I think, you know, when we talk about media coverage, especially with like Black radicals, have you ever noticed like how Black radical people or people who are deemed radical are often like criminalized? And like, I wonder, like, why is that? Why does it seem that whenever somebody has radical ideas that they are criminalized, especially when we look at like history books?
Y'all say it with me now. White supremacy. Y'all say it with me now. White supremacy, and that's the real truth right there. And we know that. And I know you knew that too. Yeah. I know you did too. But it's the truth. And it's the reality is white supremacy has always seen Black injustice as a part of their society. And so when Black people say we're not going to take this injustice, that's them going against the social norm of what is accepted. Because in white society, Black injustice is a given. In white supremacy, white injustice is almost expected. But when we start to go against the quote unquote status quo, that's why there's so much pushback. Because to white people, Black people getting murdered and killed and whatever, not all of them, but a lot of them, Black people getting murdered and killed is a part of daily life. It's a part of the trauma. That happens. Police are just doing their job. It's become desensitized. And so when Black people say, hold up, motherfucker, we're not desensitized to this shit. We see this shit. When people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, people like that stand up and say, hold the fuck up. That shit that you're doing right there, that ain't right. White people are like, oh my God, so radical.
Right.
Oh my God, you care about your people's lives? It's so radical. So how different. How dare you? And that's exactly what it is this. And I think whenever I hear a white person critique a Black person's experience or critique a Black person's feelings of racism or say, oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way because of this and the fourth, all I can think is this is how desensitized white supremacy has made to Black injustice. It's desensitized, not just white, and there's also Black people who do the same, that have been a product of the oppressor and have taken on those oppressive traits. And because of that, they feel that, oh, we're going against the status quo because the status quo is Black trauma. The status quo is Black injustice and people of color injustice. Marginalized people don't have a voice. We shouldn't have a voice in the eyes of white supremacy. And so in order to keep that in play, every time a person revolts, every time someone says, not enough, I'm done with this shit, we're radicalized. We're criminalized because a criminal can't be a hero, right?
Say that.
A criminal can't be a hero, so they use that as a weapon against us. Because Malcolm X, he's a criminal. Oh, no. He's too much. He's going too far. He's a bad man too far. But instead, we don't hear the message, because it silences his message because of all the actions that they want to say is this is too much, this is too far, this is too that. When we criminalize people of color and criminalize gay people and criminalize LGBTQI people, or criminalize marginalized people as a whole, we weaken their argument. We weaken our message. That's how they see it. Criminalize them and you don't have to worry about the fight because we'll still keep what? Fucking it up. As white people, they're going to keep fucking us over because they know as long as we say that's too much, that's too far, they're the ones in charge. And so they use that power, their systemic power, to their advantage. But I want to pass it to you, Daquon. What do you think?
I 100% agree with you. I think that it's a method and means to just like pacify people, make it so that people are like, no, like when we talk about history, this person was too radical. They're a criminal. Like we don't need that in our history. And so it creates this whitewash version of history where it's like, oh, the only way to get justice is to just like stand in solidarity and sing kumbaya because that's how you make an appeal to people that works. And it's like, no, there would be no civil rights movement if there also wasn't a Black Power movement. And oftentimes this Black Power movement is seen as too radical and is written out of history so many times, or is just written out as criminal. But let's be real, the Black Power movement and the Black Panther Party were doing things for the Black community. You know, they had like the whole school breakfast program that they started where it was like, oh, we're going to make sure that we are feeding our children before they go to school so that they can be alert, that they can focus and get their education. And you know what? They found an increase in student performance after starting the program. And as the program started spreading, I remember reading about, you know, the Black Panther Party in Chicago trying to start their school or early like breakfast program. And right as they were about to open, the Chicago police came in, smashed all the foods, desecrated in them, and destroyed it, stopped it from happening because they were like, we can't let them happen. We got to criminalize them because if they do this, they're going to get power and they see us as a threat. Or even like the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO, where they were literally trying to track and like get into the lives of Black intellectuals and invoke fear in them that the FBI is always watching them and that things can happen to them if they, you know, are going against American ideas and the American government in a way that they feel uncomfortable with. And it's a method of trying to make people be passive. And at the end of the day, like when they try to end the, you know, breakfast programs and try to end the Black Panther Party, the USDA started doing a breakfast program in public schools. Like you notice that shift when the Black Panthers start, USDA started, the government started doing it because they were like, this is this great program that's going to help out all our schools. And it's like, where did you get that from?
Taking credit for black excellence yet again. Not a surprise. Am I shocked? Do I look shocked? No. But I really want to jump back to what you just said about the precursor aspect to that, the violence or that the change that needed to happen had to happen from something else before it could go further. There had to be a radical shift before people would actually start to pay attention. And I want to kind of go back to the house on fire metaphor. And if I walk over to your house, Daquon, and say, Daquon, my house is on fire, you're gonna look at me like, bitch, what the fuck? Your house is on fire. Like, what, girl, get the fuck out of my face. Like, you know, whatever. Because I'm like, my house is on fire. Isn't that crazy? Daquon, my house is on fire. Isn't that so crazy? And you're like, bitch, what the fuck? But if I come to your door, banging and banging, oh my God, Daquon, my house is on fire, my house is on fire. You're like, oh shit, what the fuck? Bitch, did you call? Whatever. It gets you right there. It gets you in the same place because you're realizing, oh shit, this is what's really going on. This is the equivalent of Black movements. You see, the reason why there is the big, the riots and the whatever is because we're letting people know, hey, the house is on fire. Hey, racism is happening. Hey, racism is a thing. And people are like, oh my God, why are y'all fucking shit up? Why y'all fucking shit up? I'm so glad I have your attention. Let's talk about racism. And that's exactly what it is. It's all about, it's racism and these movements, and trying to understand, it's the reality of understanding that if we're going to make systemic change, if we're going to make lasting change, then we have to let people know that the house is on fire. And we can't just say it peacefully. We can't just say our house is on fire. We can't just say it's not okay, or, oh no, this is bad. Oh no, our house is on fire. No, we have to scream. We have to yell. We have to call the fire department. We have to call people. We have to talk to people. We have to yell. We have to go knock on every door. Hey, y'all, the house is on fire. Because the reality is, it's not just our house that's on fire. Because white supremacy affects white people also. Yes, they benefit from it, but it's also a negative for them too. It's a snake eating its tail. So we were letting you know, hey, our houses are all on fire. And the only way we're going to put it out is with your help. But like I said, no, we have to come to somebody's house, knock on the door and be like, yes, my house is on fire. I need some help, please. Please help me. My house is on fire. That's how they expect us to react. How would you react if your house is on fire? Not the fuck like that.
Not at all.
So I think that people don't understand that the passion that we feel, the anger that we have, is all justified because of the centuries of oppression and racism that we have experienced and we are still experiencing even in 2021. And I want to ask you, Daquon, it's crazy how they keep telling us about this violence. But my thing is, what if every time a cop killed an innocent Black man, Black people retaliated by killing an innocent white person at the same rate? What if we as a society started to take matters into our own hands, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth?
They would start killing everybody. Honestly, it would be something that's, again, deemed as being extremist. And, you know, if it's always like one of those things where like white people love to be like, oh, if the roles were reversed, but at the same time, they never want to reverse the roles for us. They never want to step into our shoes and see like what's happening in our communities. And I think kind of like going back to your last point about like the house being on fire, you know, it's about their priorities. Their priority is not to see us and have freedom and equality. You know, their priorities is their property, their materials, their comfortability. So when you have these conversations, it's like, sis, you can't keep all of that. Like, it's just not going to happen.
And that's what I fully agree. I think that the reality is like true revolutions, real ones, not that other shit where they're like, we fuck the vote. No, not that. True revolutions, real revolutions are born of true injustice. So if this injustice continues, revolutions will continue. So I just want to ask you, Daquon, how far will people of color have to go before they start paying attention and start making lasting changes instead of temporary band-aids?
Child, who knows? The limit does not exist, I think. I think it's one of those things that it's going to be that stop and go. It's going to be like, all right, you can't keep doing this. Here's this Band-Aid. And that will, you know, die things down. And then all of a sudden it ramps up again. It's like, all right, here's this Band-Aid. We'll give you this. And I think we even see it now. Like, you think last summer was huge for Black Lives Matter. Huge in so many people talking about it. And like this summer has been weirdly quiet. Like so much has died down. So many people that were like, oh, you know, BLM in their bios and be like, I'm making sure to check in on all of my Black friends and like doing all of these things. Like now it's like, all right, we're back to normal. And it's, and
racism is done. Racism is done,
right.
Daquon.
We're done. Like we put the Band-Aid, we got the sentence, it's over. And it's like, that's not how it works. So I think that we will continue to see these Band-Aids being put on until we don't have corrupt systems anymore.
You see, for me, it's like this. I think America has sharp, life-threatening wounds deep in its arms and legs and body. The government solution is always a Band-Aid, which stops one small cut, but allows all the other open wounds to get infected. Like what America really needs in order to save the body is surgery, but the government is unwilling to operate because this means having to take ownership for being the entity that caused the wounds in the first place. And no one wants to take ownership of the state of America. And that's just the period. That's just the facts. And it's so crazy because we know who's at fault. We know where the problem is. We know exactly what's the issue. But nobody in charge, nobody who has the power to make that change actually makes it because they always use the Band-Aids. Juneteenth being a holiday. Finally in 2021. Juneteenth finally being recognized as a federal holiday. There you go. We did good, right? Right, guys? We were good. Racism.
This is your reparations.
This is right. This is your reparations. Be happy, be glad, be popping, sis. And it's like, no, baby, that's not how that works. That is not how any of this works. So, Daquon, I just want to ask you this one last question here. Do you think that there will ever come a time in our lifetimes where Black radicalism or revolution is no longer needed?
During our lifetimes?
Yeah.
I'm a pessimist, and I think, unfortunately, not. Yeah. You know, it took us hundreds of years to get to this place, and it's probably going to take hundreds of years to move to another place. And I think that as long as people prioritize their comfortability, their privileges, their, material possessions over human beings, we're going to have this slow, snail-paced movements. We're going to continue to have these Band-Aids that don't solve the problem, but just like stop the bleeding for a little bit.
I fully agree. As much as I would love to see that, I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime. And it's so sad because you realize over the years just how bad it really is, because people are still doing blackface and not understanding how the fuck that's a problem. Like, we're still having to explain to white people that blackface is not okay, ever. Even if it's a joke, even if you're standing in solidarity, like all of that bullshit, like we have to explain to you why that's fucking wrong. In 2021, RuPaul's Drag Race, I think it's Australia or something like that or whatever, a girl on the show had been doing blackface recently. And RuPaul was like, go ahead.
Down under?
Down under,
multiple problems.
Multiple problems. And it's like, people are still like, and then RuPaul's reaction was really got me. It was like, I'm gonna take this as a moment to teach you and blah, blah. It's kind of like, fuck that. Fuck that. I'm tired of teaching white people why things are bad. I'm tired of teaching white people why blackface or why you shouldn't use certain words or why you can't say nigga. I don't understand why the fuck we have to keep explaining this shit to you. Like, we've been explaining this shit for so many fucking years. And like you said, Daquon, it's hard. It's as much as I want to be like, oh yes, it's gonna all change.
We're almost there.
We're almost there. Bitch, we ain't even shipped the tip of this iceberg. We didn't even ship the tip of this iceberg. Not even just in America, but everywhere. Because racism is all across the world. It's worldwide, baby. All the way in Australia, baby. Europe, France, everywhere. Asian countries, everywhere. Racism is everywhere. And it's like, as an entire society, I have no idea how long it's going to take us to get to a point where everyone worldwide recognizes that race is an issue and needs to be fixed. And even if, and the sad part is, Daquon, even if we were optimistic, even if, let's say, magically somehow we woke up one day and everybody in America was like, racism is bad and we're gonna fix it. That doesn't solve anything with Australia or Asia or any of these other countries that are rampantly racist and rampantly colorist.
Right. It doesn't reverse colonization, and it impacts own countries to this day, because there is still colonization going on.
Daquon, you better say that one more time.
It does not reverse the effects of colonization, because we still have colonization to this day.
Period. Like, period. And that's the facts that we're trying to get people to understand, is that even though we know that we can't change everything in one day or one episode or one conversation, we are taking up the reins that our forefathers, our Black forefathers and Black foremothers have left behind, because we know the fight's never going to be over in our lifetimes. But we know that if we keep having these conversations like we are, if me and you keep saying we're not standing for this shit, then the next generation who's going to watch this is going to be like, I'm not standing for this shit either.
Mm-hmm.
It's about inspiring lasting, consistent change. It's about inspiring the next generation. It's about understanding. And after Daquon, I want to say this before we leave off and move on to the next segment, but I just want to say, we are seeing now books being published about non-binary people and gay people and LGBT people in a way that's actually spotlighting them. We're finally seeing Black people being brought to the forefront in more than just traumatic ways. We're seeing that gay people, and I mean, this story, I want to give you this right here. This story that somebody told me at work today. She said her 7, 8, 10-year-old kid was like talking to his mom about RuPaul's Drag Race, and the mom accidentally called Alaska he. And the kid was like, no, mom, Alaska's pronouns are she, her when she's in drag, and it's he, him when out of drag. And Daquon, I could cry. That shit almost made me cry. Oh shit, I'm about to cry now. Oh no. But it's like, it's beautiful because I know it's not gonna happen overnight, but to see those changes happen, to see that we're making it just a little bit better for the next generation, that we're able to have people say, I'm non-binary, and not be something like, oh, what the fuck? For me to be able to say I go by she, her pronouns, for me to be able to respect you and say they, them, for me to be able to do those things, for us to be able to have this kind of discussion in this day and age, it shows that we're making progress day by day. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight, but in time we'll get there. And maybe not in our lifetime, maybe not in our kids' lifetime, or our grandkids or great-great-grandkids, but one day we'll get there.
Period. Amen. Oh, word.
So many little boys and girls and everybody in between grow up never knowing the full scope of what their culture has contributed to society and culture and history. So it's time for a change. Let's take a pause, rewind, and remind the world just how we did that. Now, in the article, 16 Queer Black Pioneers Who Made History, written by Gwen Alves and Ariel Zhao, we find out about Ernestine Eckenstein. And Eckenstein was a leader in the New York chapter of the Daughters of the Bilitis, the first lesbian civil rights and political rights organization in the United States. Now, she attended the annual Reminder Picket protest and was frequently one of the only women and the only Black woman present at early LGBTQ rights protests. Now, Eckenstein was also an early activist in the Black feminist movement of the 1970s and was involved with the organization Black Women Organized for Action. According to historians, she viewed the fight for civil rights and LGBTQ rights as intrinsically linked. Bitch, you better motherfucking work, baby. Black women fucking it up every damn time, Daquon.
Amen. And that's on what?
Period.
Let it be known. All right, so I was reading this Canadian encyclopedia where I came across this, which is like, why am I reading the Canadian encyclopedia? It's a question for another day, but let's just go with this. So we're going to be talking about Jackie Shane. Jackie Shane was a pioneering transgender performer who was a prominent figure in Toronto's R&B scene in the 1960s. Shane grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, singing in church choirs and gospel groups. She started dressing as a girl when she was 5 years old and came out to her mother as transgender at the age of 13. Influenced by her friend Little Richard, Shane quickly gravitated to the R&B and soul scene in Nashville. She performed alongside acts such as The Impressions, Jackie Wilson, and Etta James. But life in the Jim Crow South proved extremely difficult. Shane moved first to Boston and then to Montreal, where she formed an R&B band with Frank Motley. She moved to Toronto around 1959 and almost immediately felt at home. Her cover of William Bell's Any Other Way reached number 2 on the Canadian singles chart in 1963. Motown and Atlantic Records both tried to sign her, but as Shane told The Guardian in 2017, I've never really wanted to record. I get my charge from performing in front of people. That's my energy. Shane passed away in 2019 at the age of 78.
Black women constantly rising the bar and doing it flawlessly. Now, as always, thank you all so much for watching or listening and keeping the conversation going down in the comment box below. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you are listening to our podcast, please rate and review us on whatever platform you uses. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, our handles are at Andre Talks a Lot and at Daquon950. You can also follow our podcast on Instagram, The Melanin Margin, for updates on new content. Now, we'll see you all next week on The Melanin Margin, where conversations about race, nay, are never off the table.
Good.